Hello. I have recently won a book award for my book, and to honor the occasion, I would like to guide you through the 9 stages of consciousness so that you can find out where you are on this stairway. We are going to start with the lowest stage, which is the innocence stage. These people from the outside, they look very happy, have very high confidence, they are not burdened by self-doubt, and they don't wonder, am I good enough, am I successful enough? They have very little stress in their life. This looks quite enviable, but there are also some downsides to this stage. At this stage, people are always part of a tight-knit group, maybe a family, and they only function within that group on their own. They are pretty much lost. They need that support from that group, and they are also quite gullible. So whatever people tell them, they believe it. So they can easily be duped, which is not a great thing to have. And they also can be prone to addictions because they lack the self-restraint and the self-control that would enable them to say no to these things. They're also usually very promiscuous and can get into trouble because of that through divorce and stuff like that. And they can also be easily oppressed because they haven't got the willpower to say no to things or to fight for their rights. So there are also quite a lot of downsides to this stage. And once this person has got into trouble through their addictions or promiscuity, they might go up one stage of consciousness and then they end up in the dominant stage. And the first thing that they find is that they suddenly realize that there's lots of people who can do more than them, who are more successful, stuff that they were completely oblivious about before. And that causes a lot of rage in them, a lot of anger. And this rage might make them do a lot of things like aggressive behavior, violence, criminal acts. They want to get to happiness more quickly because they've lost their happiness now with that realization. And so they get into a lot of trouble because of that behavior. Now that all looks like a dramatic breakdown of the beautiful stage of innocence, but there's also something positive about it, and that is that people now have access to their willpower. And this willpower is actually the thing that drives them up the stairway of heaven and get to the highest stage, which is the enlightenment stage. Without that willpower, it cannot be done. And so if this person at the dominant stage experience enough repercussions from their negative behavior, they might go one stage up, which is the obedience stage here. And on the obedience stage, people see the world as a big hierarchy. We are not equal. There are higher persons and lower people, and you have your place in the universe, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so the top is usually God, and then there are the saints, and then the priests, and then the men, and the women, and the children. So women really actively participate in patriarchy here. And so these type of people, they usually believe in a holy book. It could also be a communist manifesto or any kind of dogmatic book that tells them how things are, and they cannot really think for themselves. They have to follow this book to the letter, and there's no social mobility. They have to put up with their place where they've been put, whether high or low. And then, of course, they still feel quite angry beneath all this, even though they're holding this anger in. It comes now out as racist, sexist, misogynist, all sorts of behaviors like this, where they are very bigoted. They try to appear as very nice people, but they're often very hypocritical because underneath there's still a lot of anger and rage, and it comes out in these types of behaviors. And we can see that in a lot of political movements going on at the moment. very clearly these types of behavior. And now what might get people out of that stage of consciousness is that they might experience a sort of betrayal, a politician who is corrupt, or a priest who visits prostitutes, and then the whole belief in this type of thing crumbles, or people just simply get higher education. Now, at the lower stages of consciousness, people do not think rationally. At the innocent stage, people usually believe heavily in superstition. At the dominant stage, people are guided by the emotions above everything else. And at the obedience stage that we've just discussed, they believe in their dogma. They're not allowed to think for themselves. But that will all change when people now come to the ambition stage of consciousness, which is the predominant stage of consciousness in our Western society. Now, in this stage, people can now think rationally, so they can ask for evidence, for proof. And that's very liberating, because with that type of thinking comes also the ability to say, let's throw away the hierarchy. We are all equal. We can all achieve. We all have a rational mind. We are essentially the same. And with that comes a democratic understanding, so that people are able to tolerate that maybe people have voted for a certain thing, and then people can accept that, which people couldn't do on the lower stages of consciousness. They would not be able to have the self-restraint to abide by a ruling or by a vote of any kind of thing. And so this is, of course, a very liberating stage, and people can become very successful. They can earn a lot of money because they now have this inner freedom to achieve what they want to achieve. Now, the downside of that is that this stage is spiritually very dissatisfying. People notice that maybe they have a lot of money now, and they have all the gadgets at home, and they have all the money they want, and yet they feel deep down very empty and dissatisfying. So they start looking for something that might fill that inner void, and that might propel them onto the sharing stage of consciousness. Now, the sharing stage of consciousness has become bigger over the last 50 years in our Western society. Even in my lifetime, has greatly increased. And on this stage, people want to care for the environment. They love everything that's natural, and they do not like things that are artificial, as people might have liked more at the ambition stage. They usually have a great circle of friends. They pay a lot of attention to their emotions, and that people feel good, that nobody is excluded, that nobody should be discriminated against. And we can easily see that that's a kind of thinking that becomes more and more prevalent in our society today. There is but also on this stage, there are some downsides. And the biggest downside for sure is that these people often are in some sort of victim mentality. They often feel traumatized by their upbringing, by their parents, by the capitalist society, or that destroyed the environment, and doesn't allow them to live in their beautiful sharing type existence in harmony with nature. And so there is quite a bit of complaining and victim mentality on this stage. And another thing that is also a problem at this stage is that they have a bad relationship to power. At the sharing stage, people think all power is evil by design, and they also believe that we must not only equal, but the same. So nobody must be higher, nobody must be lower. So that is to the detriment of people of higher capacity, because if you have higher intelligence and ability to achieve something, at the sharing stage, you will be cut with a lawnmower to size. Nobody must be above anybody else. And that is not very good for people who are of higher ability. And now, what gets people out of the sharing stage is that at some point they think, I don't want to be a victim anymore. I've had enough with this type of thinking. And then they might move on to the responsibility stage. Now, the responsibility stage is part of the higher stages of consciousness. And here, people experience a great sense of liberation. All the suffering from the lower stages of consciousness usually greatly become less on the higher stages. And it starts with the responsibility level, where people say, whatever happens to me, it's my own responsibility. They believe in the law of karma, they believe in previous lives. They usually have adopted a spiritual belief again that people usually threw away at the ambition stage, where they have had a very materialistic worldview, and maybe also at the sharing stage. But usually at some point in the sharing stage, people restart their spirituality and then use it at their responsibility to start being able to achieve a lot of things again. Because if you stop feeling like a victim, a lot of energy is liberated to achieve any desire. So people start doing the law of attraction, they visualize their goals. If they have a problem, they just find a great method to resolve it. And in that way, people are actually quite capable of achieving feats that were impossible at the lower stages. For example, they might be able to cure a disease that is deemed incurable on the lower stages, or they make dreams come true, which are extremely unlikely at the lower stages. And at the higher stages of consciousness, people want to develop further. They are not pushed from one stage to the other through great suffering. And so the responsibility person at some point realizes that love is the ultimate healing modality in the universe. And so then they move on more to the love stage of consciousness and include that more into their modalities. And they might send love to their enemies, and they bless everybody, and they become what we would call a saint in Christian society. A truly loving and very capable person. And as these developments stabilize, the person will experience more stages of bliss, which is here the second highest. And so they get in contact with their own divine nature or Buddha nature, and they might be working with the chakras, and they experience more and more states of bliss and make that the focal point of their spiritual development. There is, even at that stage, there is a downside, and that is through the bliss experiences, a lot of stuff from your unconscious mind will come up, and so you need to clear that out, which can be also quite a demanding task. But if you succeed, then you can ascend to the final stage of consciousness, which is the enlightenment stage. At the enlightenment stage, the person says, I am love. So there is no more separation between the care for yourself or others. So all selfishness is gone. You love everybody as if they are your own beloved children. You want everybody to be happy with a full heart, without any kind of restriction of saying, yes, but my own biological children, they should be happier than those other people. Now all of that will fall away, and you have reached the pinnacle of human development. Now, don't be alarmed if you see bits and bobs of the lower stages in yourself. And I believe people on YouTube who watch videos about spiritual and psychological development are usually at the sharing stage and responsibility stage. So I would assume that you are there as well, quite likely as your predominant stage. But even at these stages, you can have a bad day where you still get a temper tantrum that gets you all the way down to the dominant stage, or you binge watch all night long something on Netflix, and then that would be more an innocence type behavior, but it's a behavior, it's not your predominant stage. And then when you have a wonderful meditation, you might go up to the higher stages, maybe even experience states of bliss, and that is also very good. And so the stages of consciousness are more fluid than I've explained it. It's not quite as rigid. So you can experience many stages in a single day. You still have a predominant stage to which you come back to after you've been lower down or higher up. And that over many years can change. And in my book, you can find lots of exercises to accelerate your stages on the stairway of consciousness. But whether we do these exercises or not, just simply understanding where we are and what the higher stages look like will already facilitate that you go up there much more easily. If you know, oh, okay, I need to do this type of behavior more, or I need to change my attitude in that way in order to go up a stage, then it becomes a lot easier to simply get there. So I hope you found this useful, and obviously in my book is an awful lot more of detail, and thank you for listening.